Everybody, welcome back for another episode. I guess this is Large Man, Small Dog, episode 2. Listen, I really want to highlight the difference between two presidents here. President Donald Trump and President Barack Obama when it comes to Veterans Day. Yesterday was Veterans Day, and if you've been watching this channel, you know that I served in the United States Marine Corps as a field artilleryman. It's a time in my life that I'm very proud of. My family has been in the military for generations, for a couple hundred years now in the United States. And so that identity itself is something that's kind of ingrained in me, in my family's cultures and tradition. So I went ahead and sat through the 28-minute long speech that President Trump gave, because I don't want you to have to go through that, because a lot of it's just self-serving, a lot of talking about the policies, or at least what he believes the impact of the policies have been on the people. But it really just highlights a general lack of understanding of what service means. And I mean, I'm not surprised by that, and you shouldn't be surprised by that either. Listen, American families, right? 80% of American families have a connection to veterans. There's not a single veteran in Donald Trump's family tree. In fact, his grandfather came over from Germany after being kicked out for being a draft dodger, right? And of course, President Trump is pretty famous for avoiding the draft because of bone spurs. But in the choppy speech that he gave, that was obviously coming from a teleprompter, yes, he did give a couple stories of veterans. But like I said, for the main part, it was just how he could put his personal touch on Veterans Day, or how he can change it so it'll always be remembered to have his name attached to it. Let's have a look.
As you know, today is not only Veterans Day, but it's my proclamation that we are now going to be saying and calling Victory Day for World War I. Victory Day. I was recently at an event and I saw France was celebrating Victory Day, but we didn't. And I saw France was celebrating another Victory Day for World War II. And other countries were celebrating. They were all celebrating. We're the one that won the wars. And I said, from now...
One of the things that you really get from listening to him talk about kind of military history or our involvement in foreign wars is just a great, very deep lack of knowledge when it comes to history and our participation in these conflicts. America had a very big part when it came to the European campaign against Germany. Yes, and I would never take away from the participation and the sacrifice that our troops made in that war. No, I definitely won't. My family fought in that. My family fought in the Battle of the Bulge. But it's something that it's pretty common in America to think that we just, we're the back-to-back World War champs. And that really does deny the sacrifice and the strategic prowess of our allies. I mean, World War II, famously, the Russians sacrificed millions of troops to really take back most of the land that Germany actually captured. It was mostly the Russian advance into Germany that actually had the Germans back on their heels. But of course, acknowledging that really goes against the kind of American-centric ideology that's necessary, that worldview that's necessary to really rationalize kind of existing in such a lack of understanding.
Now on, we're going to say Victory Day for World War I and World War II, and we could do for plenty of other wars, but we'll start with those two.
Like I said, it's not exactly just about the absence of language when it comes to supporting the troops, right? The guy bends over backwards to have some kind of sense of obedience from the military. But I think really what should disturb us the most is really the lack of grasping the sense of service. A misreading of sacrifice, and not just a neglecting of the wounded body, but what it can do to the soul of those who actually served in the military. So we don't have to look back very far. A lot of people who worked with Trump have given tales. We can always remember General John Kelly, who's the chief of staff in President Trump's first term, coming up and talking about how Trump would routinely disparage the troops and those who've died in combat, calling them suckers and losers. Or the testimony of many troops and families who feel like they were more of a spectacle or a prop. And that isn't something that's particular to the Republican Party. It's something that's also done by the Democratic Party. The government, anytime there's any kind of election cycle, or any kind of moment that they can really capture to increase their reputation or, make their constituents happy, they're always going to jump on that. So yeah, it's pretty common to have the politicians, prop up veterans, not to honor them, but just to kind of use them, as political theater, as spectacle. But what this tells us, and that's what's more important, because symbolism is everything in politics, but what this tells us is the leader who treats the veteran more as a symbol or as a prop, rather than the person themselves, really does propagate misunderstanding. When the president uses the image of troops for self-service or arranges appearance over a substance, the sacrifices of their service are overshadowed by the politics, and it really does take away from their homecoming. The homecoming of a troop, of a veteran, historically those who've gone into combat and come back and re-entered into society, is a very chaotic time. And it's a time that's really important to the individual, kind of becoming human again. It's one of the reasons why we have 22 veterans a day who take their own lives, because this is that absence of belonging. Anyone who's been in the military knows that once you leave the military, you feel like a foreigner in your own land. It's really the best way to put it. You don't have a connection with civilians anymore. Your worldview is altered in a way that it's really beyond discussion. I mean, you can tell people about it, but it's one of those things that you have to go through to really understand or to really empathize with people. And like I said, historically, there's always been rituals to bring the soldiers or combatants back into society, to leave that part of them on the outside, and to come back in and understand that they are a citizen, they are one of the tribe. Because leaving the military feels like you are leaving a tribe. And for many veterans, once they leave, the feeling is incredibly isolating. Every person who served in the military, I'm willing to say, knows someone who has taken their own life. It's a fact. It's that common. It touches every military family. So when we prop veterans up and put them up as some kind of immortal being who's tough and above it all, some kind of stoic warrior who looks at the world in an incredibly poetic lens that's just beyond the comprehension of the normal civilian, you do great injustice to the humanity of the veteran themselves. And that's why, like I said, in contrast to this, yesterday, President Barack Obama just kind of surprised a flight of veterans in a very humble, almost innocuous manner. Just a few simple words that resonated in a way that the 28-minute speech that Donald Trump gave just can never have that kind of impact. Because even though Obama never served in the military, and to be honest, like I said, I come from the right. I wasn't the biggest fan of Obama, but the contrast between the two presidents is so stark that it makes you long for an era that maybe you didn't like. To have a president who, it seems like, really understands the gravity of their decisions when it comes to putting people's lives on the line. It seems to be something that weighed quite heavily on Barack Obama, and not at all when it comes to Donald Trump. Like, to him, it's all about the glory. It's all about the victory. You don't look at things in a hollowed, respectful way. Everything's got to be the biggest. Everything's got to be the grandest. Everything's got to be about me. It's about having his name attached to it. Let's just have a look real quick at what happened yesterday with Barack Obama on that airplane.
Hello, everybody.
What?
As we approach Veterans Day, I wanted to stop by and just say thank you for your extraordinary service to you, your family. The sacrifices that all of you made to protect our country is something that will always be honored. And we are very grateful, and we also happen to welcome you with a 70-degree day in D.C., which doesn't always happen around here.
Sir,
Keep
last
that.
time I got to see a president, it was Gerald Ford.
How about that?
And as simple as it seems, this is honestly what connecting with veterans is. It's not about having a giant ceremony and making everyone feel like, just part of a mass that you're leading. It's about bringing up the spirit of the individual veteran, having them feel like they've been seen, even if it's just a moment that, maybe I do hold some value. Because a lot of veterans feel like they don't have that, especially in today's military. One of the things I've been saying for the longest time is that the glorification and worship of the veteran in the United States is one of the most toxic things that can happen to veterans. Because when you hold up a standard for what somebody should be, when you create a myth that people try to live up to or think that they should live up to, it just puts people in a sense that, they failed to live up to that standard. You want veterans to be some kind of class of a super American, super soldier, super person, just someone who's above it all, above feeling, above sadness, above depression. And that's the same kind of mindset that denied PTSD for generations of veterans who went through severe conflict. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korean War. If you showed any kind of sign, which most of veterans had some kind of PTSD when you go through that kind of stuff, trauma is something that, you can become accustomed to, but it's going to have an effect on you. PTSD is an incredibly common thing. But it used to just be seen as a kind of cowardice, or, you're just a broken person. You're not fit for service. That's the same kind of mindset that pushes that forward. But this, actually reaching out and just humbly speaking to the veteran actually means much more than the grand spectacle. I honestly do believe that. I find this much more profound than anything that I heard in the 28 minutes of Trump speaking earlier. Being a veteran, right? Going into service is more than just wearing the uniform. It's more than just a medal. It's more than simply just a salute. A veteran is a citizen who sat in the seat of risk, of uncertainty. You sign your name on that line understanding that you can give it all up. And that's something that a very small segment of the population actually did. And like I said, when you return, when you leave service, fundamentally you have changed as a person. And for a lot of veterans out there, they have very heavy memories, a lot of restless nights, their ability to operate in normal society because they're just forced to kind of operate as if everything is normal when a lot of their problems haven't been addressed, puts them in a position where they can fall into a very dark place. When they return to a society that often says, thank you for your service, the work at that point isn't done. A simple thank you isn't enough. The kind of work from mental care, the kind of work for mental health, physical health, of acknowledgement and solidarity is something that really needs to be provided for a lifetime. President Barack Obama stepping onto that tarmac and just something so simple means more. He showed up, he shook hands, he looked them in the eye and he said, your service will be honored today and every day. And that's what every veteran wants to feel because we never leave it. In the Marine Corps, we have the saying, once a Marine, always a Marine. My father served more than 2 decades in the Marine Corps, and he's been out for a long time, but he's still a gunny. That's who he is. It has never left him, and I don't think it ever will. And it has left him as somebody who needed a serious amount of support because of the injuries that he sustained over a career and over several different theaters. The commitment to the veterans has to be more than a spectacle. It has to be something that's sustained. And the acknowledgement of the impact that service has to be something that's more generally accepted and doesn't have any kind of stigma. I'm a big fan of Thomas Paine, and I think he would have agreed on this. The citizen soldier doesn't cease to become a part of society. Their actions become the very fabric of society. The veteran must be welcomed home, not just in words, but with rights, with health care and dignity, and of course, in opportunity. And that's why when we talk about celebrating the veteran on Veterans Day and highlighting what we've actually done for the veterans, it always feels like it always just kind of falls flat, no matter who the president is, because it's a heavy thing for a lot of people to carry. Truly, that it is. And it makes me think of a lot of my friends that I've lost over the years because they felt like that care and understanding wasn't there. But society has to live up to the promise. We have to ensure that not just veterans, but all Americans are able to receive health care, housing, food assistance, opportunity when it comes to attain employment with a livable wage, that they can actually build a future. This is something that's necessary if the fabric of society is to remain unfrayed. We have to treat veterans as full citizens, not just an archetype of something that's unattainable, but for the humans who've gone through a very hard times that needs to be recognized and appreciated, and they need to be brought into society and not held apart or above. They need to be held on an equal level with the citizens, while at the same time acknowledging the sacrifice of their service. And we have to stop using the military as a symbol and spectacle to push political policy and abuse their trust in a way to inculcate a sense of obedience that the public will always fear. Because in our nation, the military should never be obedient and loyal simply to one person. They represent and protect the people of this country. They stand for the Constitution, not for the government, not for just the commander-in-chief, but for the people as a whole. So on Veterans Day, whether it's yesterday or whether it's the ones to come, we have to salute the service and the sacrifice. We have to not salute the trappings, but the soul of service. It's not about honoring the press release. It's about honoring the pledge. It's about when I got off the bus in Parris Island and me and everyone who was on that bus with me shitting themselves as we're getting screamed at to get off the bus, put their feet on those yellow footprints and knew that our lives were going to be different from here on out. Because this nation, we have to remember, was built on and held up by millions of men and women who answered the call of duty. And if we honor them well, with presence, substance, and fidelity, then the words of our founding, the words of the citizen soldier, will always ring true. Liberty, justice, and opportunity, not just for one, but for all. And the veteran, our comrade in the cause, will know I served. And when I came back, my country rose to meet me. I was welcomed home. The sacrifice that my brothers and sisters have made from generation to generation live through me and every other veteran out there. And a few words of understanding will always mean more than pomp, grand spectacle. I stand by that statement. If you're still here at this point, ladies and gentlemen, like and subscribe. Think about becoming a member. I didn't post anything about it yesterday, really, but I want to give a big happy birthday to the Marine Corps, and of course, a happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. And a lot of you who are on this channel as well, a lot of you who are subscribers and in the comment sections, thank you for your service. And I hope that you're being well taken care of. And if you're having a hard time, feel free to DM me on Instagram. You know, you can always say something in the comments. I'm pretty on top of that most of the time, unless the video blows up. But yeah, if you're still here at this point, ladies and gentlemen, like and subscribe. Think about becoming a member. Tell us what you think in the comment section. Hype, share. It does great things for the algorithm as the channel continues to grow. Yeah, think about leaving a donation. That's always great. Or, you know, donate to a charitable organization. We got some big things coming up. Actually, the video that we made yesterday, that gentleman, Nick Laughter, out of Utah, he's actually trying to primary Burgess Owens for his congressional seat. And we talked a little bit last night, and I think we might have a bit of a conversation on the channel, try to give him a little bit more visibility, kind of explore what some of his stances are. Seems to make sense. I don't really know the guy, so I'm interested. Tell me what you think. It'd definitely be a change for the channel, but if we can get some more visibility to people out there who are actually trying to represent the people and, you know, get corporate money out of politics and actually try to change the focus from the interest of the wealthy to the interest of the people, even if it's starting small, you know, we'll do what we can on this channel. But appreciate your time as always, ladies and gentlemen. The work week has begun, so get after it. Stop watching this. I know you're sitting on the toilet. You've been on there too long. Your legs have fallen asleep. Get up and get back to the cubicle. We love you guys. Have a good one.